Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever the case may be. Just presenting my research presentation on mediolateral anterior-posterior balance and core stability gender differences among university sport and exercise students, a cross-sectional experimental study design. A little bit of background on what the whole concept behind looking into these few areas were. Core stability and core strength and posture have been topics of research since the early 1980s and still remain quite a hot topic today in relation to both clinical and practical technicians in terms of physiotherapists, personal trainers, all that kind of thing. Research has defined postural stability and balance as the ability to return the body's close point to an equilibrium, so in a centre point. The core has been seen as a muscular corset that wraps around the whole unit to stabilise the body, including things like your pelvic floor. A study done by Alderton and others in 2003 suggests that the centre of pressure represents the resultant of gravitational forces and muscular stabilising forces that has been used to investigate the effect of sensory outputs, so eyes, ears, smell, touch, that kind of thing. Disturbances on postural stability in healthy individuals, as well as whether they affect age or gender. Research done by Carlson and Freiberg in 1999 looked at force plate measurements on post-cerebral vascular accident patients. The 20 patients were compared to each other using a clinical balance test, most commonly known as the Berg's test. Basically just a clinical test based on visual evaluation over different balance tasks, finding a general significant correlation between centre of pressure and ground reaction force, however not really defining anything between genders. The main purpose behind this study is that there's a lot of research is lacking the assessment as to whether there is actually a difference between males and females when it comes to assessing their balance, core stability and strength. A lot of studies go into analysing each segment of that, whether it be core stability, strength, but they don't really analyse gender differences. So the main purpose of this is that it's going to relate and analyse males and females in relation to core stability, balance and core strength. The null being no difference between males and females in core stability, between balance and strength, and the null being that there is a difference between males and females in core stability, balance and core strength. Basically the methods were, there were 22 students, sport and exercise students that were recruited from CQ University while we were at res school, obviously. Independent variables, male and female. Dependent variables, balance, centre of pressure with eyes closed, same with eyes opened, and a core stability test or strength test. Measures of central tendency were used, so mean, standard deviation, correlation variance, and Pearson's correlation coefficient. Demographic and dependent variables followed an independent t-test for comparing two response samples, repeated measures, males and females, centre of pressure with eyes closed, males and females, centre of pressure with eyes open, males and females, core strength test. A significant level of 0.05 was used. Again, type 1 and type 2 errors were revised to state whether the null or the alternative were true or false. Testing protocols were used, obviously the force plate, which is the one that's located in the lab there on campus. Students were selected at random to complete the test. Basically they had to remove their footwear, selecting two pieces of paper at random, whether it be right or left leg, which they stood on first. They would first have to stand for 1 minute with their eyes open on left or right feet, and then they would repeat the measures again at random, repeating the task but with eyes closed. They would then after that go through and perform a plank exercise strength test, and that was just basically holding a plank position, nice and easy, nice and simple. Main risks involved was just making sure that the technique was maintained, and there was a supervisor that just went around with the time trials to analyse and make sure that they weren't going to injure themselves. Obviously a time limit was kept for this, so it was 5 minute maximum, and once they reached the 5 minute, then they were called out. Main results, so there was 8 males, 14 females, so more males than women, more females than males, sorry. So average age was 28, height 174 centimetres, body mass 73, training in years 9.76 respectively. Males presented with a higher mean in training, 10.5 years than females, which was quite interesting. After completing statistical analysis though, there was no significance between males and females for eyes closed, centre of pressure, or eyes open, centre of pressure. No significant difference was found between males and females in the core strength test either. So this is just a little table on my results, just analysing each little segment there. The main significant difference that was found from this little study was actually after I had to redo the stats. There was a lot of students, or a lot of people that actually failed and couldn't hold with the eyes closed test. So what I had to do was basically eliminate those from the data, and because you can't represent a zero when you're calculating mean and standard deviation. After doing that and using a true sample of people that were successful in doing eyes closed or eyes opened, it was actually quite interesting. There was a difference between males and females, and the main one being, if you look at my results reviewed stats sheet or slide, it basically says that eyes open, there was a significant difference between males and females. In my chart, which is the next page along, that becomes quite obvious in the graph there, and they're talking about averages. Obviously it's measured in hertz according to the force plate on X and Y axis. But you can see there on the chart that with the right and left, both females were significantly higher than males, which was very, very interesting. So in terms of a discussion, the study was determined to design whether there was a difference between males and females, and we did find that, with a significant difference between males and females after the stats were redone with those who had failed being eliminated with eyes open for centre of pressure. This also correlates with a number of different research reports out there found, and I just go through a few in through here. Again, that's all in through my references. The main part being that the results indicated that there were gender differences and they were evident in standing balance. So that's again relating to that centre of pressure. Another study by Eldhar and Anderson in 1989, they've significantly found that their p-value was also quite significant, which is stated there as well. Also in another report, which is quite interesting actually, is that females by Okada in 2011 reported that females who were performing Pilates had improved effects of muscle strength and pelvic floor muscles, and therefore core stability was increased. Even though that our results showed that our core strength test there was no difference, females did present with a higher balance, which is the eyes open centre of pressure reading, so that may have something to do with core strength and whatnot. The other thing which I found really, really interesting was the fact that after I reran the stats from the original lot of data, 35% of female students and 25% of male students actually failed, which was quite interesting. So whether that's relating to removing that sensory thing, relating to the central nervous system, it was very, very interesting to see that. And again, my report goes through that in detail. The next one, seeing that there may have been a link between, I know that with discipline training in years, the males on average was 10.5 years and females was 9.3, indicating that males in this study on average have trained longer, therefore present with a higher score for the core strength test, which was really, really interesting. 2 males in particular reached the maximum limit of 5 minutes, whereas the highest female time held was 3.31. Limitations in this study was obviously relating back to the time of day when we did it. A lot of it was done in the evening, so little things like that need to be, I guess, reviewed for if we were to do it again, or whether they are determining factors if stability is worse than it is later in the day. And Gribbles touched on that a little bit, talking about dynamic and static posture fatigue as well. Also, food and water wasn't monitored as well. So I guess in conclusion, it can be said that there were no major significances between males and females for core stability, strength and balance. However, interesting little fact with eyes open, significant difference between males and females was found there, and that's quite evident in the data and the report that I ran. How this can be used, practical implications. Training needs for males and females based on the results show that balance training should be different for males and females. And getting outside, thinking outside the square, so using, taking away sensors and stuff like that, that can be implemented for coaches, trainers, fitness professionals, allied health professionals. Core strength training needs to be included again with all those allied health professionals through there. Also education benefits, creating more awareness about what core stability, balance and core strength actually is, and getting out there and making it more readily available for men and women. Alright guys, that's basically it in a nutshell. Again, big thanks to Brendan, Greg and Crystal for all of their help. Enjoy. Thanks guys.